Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon when you are watching this webinar. Welcome back to the webinar series. Getting ready for our work this summer in June, as well as into the 2016-2017 school year. Again, my name is Dave Nagel. Very honored and excited to continue to provide some overview and information around how we can take the practices of grading and feedback and ensure that they are driving student learning for our students in Worthington City schools. Hopefully by this point in time, you're well into the practice and protocol of having your working handout available. You have a new handout now for webinars 5, 6, 7, and 8, and we're going to jump into webinar 5 now and look at grading parameters. When I use that term, what I'm mainly trying to illustrate is that at the end of the day, and this isn't just in our profession around grading, it's really anywhere, practice will always trump the policy. Policies are set to guide individuals and guide their actions, not to provide a specific mandate for every action and strategy that's put in place. So we've got to be very cautious with that and realize we should be developing policies and understanding around guidelines that will drive classroom practice, and especially at the secondary level. Certainly we're going to have different subject matter, different classroom makeups, that we cannot pigeonhole or shoehorn anybody into one specific practice. But at the same time, policies should guide to where we have enough consistency across classrooms, specifically within classrooms of the same course, same department, same subject matter, but to some degree within the school so we can have the appropriate amount of alignment. As I just mentioned, we cannot falsely assume that we could rewrite a policy for anything, let alone grading and feedback, that would change the actions or the practices of the adults. And I think we can all agree to that and why we're taking the approach we are in Worthington. So a quick reflection question. If you have a few moments, please pause the recording. What are some current elements that you as a classroom teacher, perhaps an administrator, know about the current grading policy, and how are you currently monitoring them? How are you currently making sure those are taking place in your classroom? Take a few moments and record your thoughts on the reflection question on the handout, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. As always, if you need more time to pause the recording, please do so. You know the drill. So I won't continue to belabor that point, but hopefully you had a chance to jot down am I aware of what some of the elements within the policy are? Because one of the things we need to talk about is sometimes the perception of what is, with my fingers, a policy, and sometimes it's really not a policy. It's a recommendation, it's a statement, or it's something that was mentioned before that isn't even in place now. When I talk about the policies, I like to use four overarching elements to them, and you see the football field here. First and foremost, are grades truthful? When we develop policies or we put practices in place, would we agree that when students get a certain grade, it's honest and accurate based on what standards and skills they've demonstrated, what concept and skills related to standards they've demonstrated within that course? If students walking out with an A or B in biology, algebra, fill in the blank, they should be able to, if our grades are truthful around that. And if students cannot master and demonstrate evidence of certain skills, it's going to be difficult for us to justify giving them a high grade or even a passing grade at times. Are grades reliable? Across two classrooms, would we see relatively the same grade for the same level of work in two different classrooms of the same course? That's the degree of reliability we want to have. Are grades impartial? Are they impartial across genders and socioeconomic status? And are they impartial related to the amount of parental involvement? Do we have parents that are more involved and something happens there? One thing about the impartiality element is it's difficult to monitor that in any one classroom, but we can monitor over time with a lot of our classrooms and look at the difference between grade distributions across genders, ethnicities, compared to external assessments. Right now, nationally, girls to boys, National Honor Society is about 3-to-1. 3 times as many girls are in National Honor Society. Now, certainly there are a few other factors, but grade point average is by far and away the highest determining factor. For the ladies or women listening to this webinar, most men will admit women are smarter than men. Not quite sure you're 3 times as smart. So if we see that type of discrepancy, might we think that we have some a lack of impartiality? I would encourage you to monitor that within your school, within the district. And lastly, and it relates a little bit to the truthfulness, are grades understandable? Do students and parents know what the grade means in terms of what their next learning steps would be? So you see this in your handout. I've gone ahead and added this to your handout so you would be able to follow along with the next activity. What I'm just going to ask is you take a moment and within your specific classroom for your subject matter, to jot down how would you apply these 4 parameters: truthfulness, reliability, impartiality, and understandability. Just in general, what would you say right now? These are actions that they must be in place for me to say my grades meet those 4 parameters. Because the whole point of the metaphor around the football field is once we agree to these, then we give teachers a lot more freedom, a lot more autonomy and flexibility. We don't mandate certain practices. We just agree that they need to fit within these parameters. Take a few moments and complete activity 1. I'll come back in just a moment, but certainly you'll probably need to pause the recording at this time. Be back in just a few moments. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Again, most likely you had to pause the recording for much longer than I paused. If you need more time, please do so. The one other point I wanted to address during this particular webinar is when we look at all the parameters, the main important one for us to focus on is the truthfulness. Are grades truthful? Would we agree when students receive their grade that that's a strong indication of how successful they have been and they will be in subsequent courses, specifically in Worthington? So what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of imagine this situation. I'm going to go into character for a moment, but imagining you're coming out of the grocery store and you run into me, and I am that parent that's going to ask questions and challenge a little bit, and that the easiest thing to do is avoid me, but it's too late. I ran into you. And I said, my son or daughter's about to be in your, or is in your current class, and you're about to teach a unit on fill in the blank. War of 1812, Pythagorean theorem, acids, bases, and salts, genetics. And I say, what does he need to do to get an A or a B? If you give me a good answer, I'm going to leave you alone. In fact, it's Saturday. I'm going to leave you alone anyway. But if you don't give me a quality answer, I'm going to need to meet with you next week on your prep period. And what answer I will not accept is he needs to do his homework and complete his work. That doesn't tell me anything. So what I'm going to challenge you to do in activity 2 is for an upcoming unit, what are the things students would need to know and be able to do to get an A or even a B+? We can have a little bit of freedom. And I want you to be as specific as you can in terms of the concrete evidence that they need to produce. They need to be able to solve accurately Punnett squares, determine the genetic probability of certain crosses, and be able to fill in the blank. But whatever it is, it's got to have a level of concreteness that a student would be able to know, I don't have an A or B because I haven't shown evidence towards that, not that I just didn't quote unquote do my work. And do that for the BC range and the CD range. And then the bottom, what are the things that if they cannot show evidence towards that, I cannot give them a passing grade, either because they can't do it when they're giving me their evidence, or those missing assignments really were the essentials. And what this should do is 2 things. Maybe identify which tasks that we're putting in front of students we're going to need to grade and score are really useful and beneficial, which ones might not be, and then maybe which ones need to have more weight. So if they miss that one, it's really not that big of a deal. I'm still going to count it, but it wasn't related to the really deep, important evidence that I needed to know what they needed to know for this unit because it was really related to the standards. It made it truthful. And what might be some things that I'm going to weight with more points because it really shows that. Please take a few moments and complete this. And if you're in your teacher-based team right now and you're doing this with a peer who teaches the same subject matter, this is a great activity to go, have we really thought about what they really need to know and be able to do within that unit? So that's an activity that I'm sure is going to take you much longer than a little bit of a pause. So once you complete that, here are a few quick reflection questions for webinar 5. First and foremost, reflect on grading from the standpoint of looking at parameters versus mandates. How does that resonate with you? Where we create examples and guides for teachers to follow, and then within course teams and departments, teachers develop those together. Because there are some parameters for truthfulness that would be different in math than they might be for science. And then which is the most important to you in your classroom? How do you feel about how your peers' grading actions relate to these 4 parameters? Be as specific as you can be, and really these are ones that are really related so much to our peers, and I think a teacher-based team discussion is probably what's needed. And if you're with some of your peers who are not on your teacher-based team that teach the same course, that would be a good time to complete these reflection questions. As always, thank you for your time. Very excited to talk with you on the next webinar. And please, if you have thoughts or questions any point in time, please send them to me at dave.nagel@corwinlearning.net. You see my cell phone number there, and certainly visit gradingforimpact.com. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.